Good afternoon, this is Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to this information webinar on ESS BIZGRANTS. If during the webinar you have any questions, could you please type your questions into your computer and in webinar jargon, raise your hand, and I will answer the questions later during the webinar. In each of these information webinars, we feature a component of a government grant. And today we're going to look at accelerating commercialisation. This is a very large grant that the federal government has that can be of significant benefit to a lot of small, medium enterprise operators. So let's have a look at some of the key components of it. The product must be a novel product, process or service. So it's not something that they saw in America and they come back into Australia to try to do something with. And the objectives must be or are to accelerate the commercialisation of technology. That's why the government has issued a grant. So this grant cuts in after the research and development is finished. If you work with clients who have been undertaking major research and development projects, in most cases there is still a lot of activity to be done after the R&D work has finished, and that's what this grant's for. It's called commercializing the concept. And obviously the government's hopeful that these sort of businesses will become new businesses and start employing Australians and earning income, and that there will be greater commercial and economic returns from that research. The government utilises commercialisation advisors. They're situated around Australia. There's 43 of them. And they are there to assist in the application process. They are not directly employed by the government. They are contractors, and most of them have come from a private enterprise background. The grants are of a sum of money up to $1 million. So this is the largest grant that's available in Australia for small business operators. This grant's a little bit smaller than its predecessor, which was called Commercialising Australia, and it had grants of up to $2 million. But the applicant must contribute 50% of costs. So obviously if someone's trying to get a $1 million grant, they've got to have the ability to raise $1 million to match that grant. The average grant size is about $250,000, but that still means that the applicant has to have $250,000. So let's look at the eligibility. It's a company or an individual or researcher can apply, but they must agree that if they are admitted to the Accelerating Commercialisation program, that at that stage they will form a company. And even if they are accepted into the program, they will not receive any money from the government until they have incorporated a company, and it is the company that will contract with the government. Now the turnover eligibility is under $20 million, but the important point here is it can be nil. So a complete startup can apply for this sort of funding. And indeed, many of the applicants are startups, businesses that have been conceived for the R&D component and are now going to be, I'm told I've got a technical issue here. seem to have a technical issue here. We're just trying to fix it now. Apologies for that. We had a technical issue. I was told there was no sound. Hopefully you can hear me now. I'll just go back over a little bit what we were just talking about. The eligibility requirements are that a company is the preferred entity, but an individual or a researcher can submit the application as long as they agree that if they are admitted to accelerating commercialisation, that they will form a company. And the turnover figure for this grant is a turnover under $20 million, but the turnover could in fact be nil. So a complete startup is able to apply for this particular grant. So that's great, but it does highlight that many of these businesses have a long way to go before they are going to have a successful commercial enterprise. The applicant must have the ownership or the beneficial use of the intellectual property. This means that it just can't be borrowed from someone else. It's got to be the beneficial use. And one of the other key requirements here is that the applicant must not have made first sale. Now that's first commercial sale. I had a situation where an independent market reviewer decided that a product was saleable at about $13,500, and the company did a deal with a mining company, because that was the prime industry this particular product was developed for, that they would make 10 units available at $4,500 each for the mining company to conduct their own due diligence trials. Now the government accepted that $45,000 that the company received was not a first sale. So it's the first commercial sale where the support cuts out. Eligible expenditure can be labour, as long as the person has been paid. In other words, there's been a pay-as-you-go tax certificate issued for them. Labour on costs at 30% can be charged. You can claim plant expenditure if plant has been purchased specifically to undertake the commercialisation, and the claim you'll be able to make will be based on the depreciation during that period. And prototype expenditure, if prototypes are needed to be built, which invariably they are in this type of project, that prototype expenditure can be claimed against the grant. Incidentally, you have 2 years in which to undertake the expenditure. But business plans, budgets and cash flow forecasts are also included as eligible expenditure. So that's work that an accountancy firm that's committed to offering business advisory services could well be able to undertake for your client. Determination of capital raising strategies, preparing appropriate documents for capital raising fall under the commercialisation process. And the funding can also be used to engage experienced executives in managing the business, sales of product, financial areas. These people need to be experienced operative that can bring extra value to the business. So that's the overview of what's included in the expenditure that's available under this grant. So to submit an application, an expression of interest needs to be completed and lodged with Oz Industry as the agent for the entrepreneur program, which has the task of administering accelerating commercialisation. The expression of interest is a fairly detailed document, and most applicants will need some assistance in that area that an accountancy business could supply. And if invited, the applicant will then be invited to complete an application form, which is a very detailed form. It requires a lot of answers to be submitted. The merit criteria is worth looking at, as most of these government grants, especially the larger ones these days, have a merit criteria schedule. This one's no different. And after all, there's $1 million of taxpayers' money being made available for an applicant. So first of all, they need to be able to justify that they need the funding. So if the applicant had $10 million in their bank account as per their balance sheet, they're probably not going to get support under this program. There needs to be a market opportunity for the product they're producing. So even at this stage, they need to be able to submit some sort of market review report from a qualified person that will convince the panel that's going to award these grants that this is a opportunity worth pursuing from Australia's point of view. The value proposition, similar sort of comment. What's it going to generate? How many jobs? What sort of income? Is a viable business going to be created? And probably one of the most important aspects of the merit criteria, has the applicant got any idea how this plan is going to be executed, how this R&D prototype is going to be made into a viable commercial product? And a lot of applicants will require some real advice and assistance in this area. Now, it could be from you as their accountant, or it could be from an experienced management consultant or experienced business person, a company director. And that rolls into, do they have the management capability? And in some instances, the decision may well be that the applicant, the current CEO or the inventor, does not have that management capability. And that is why you might have considered expending some of the money on engaging some experienced executives, and the grant money can be utilised to employ those people for a period of time, normally 2 years, so that they can ensure that the plan is executed and that appropriate management knowledge and skills are brought to this business. And governments want to know in every grant these days, what's in it for Australia? What's the national benefits? Is there going to be any spin-off for other businesses? Is it going to create some new jobs? Is there going to be some significant work for a university or other sort of research organisation out of this project? What are the side benefits? In weighting an application, the government has priority industries. So if your client is from one of these industries, and there's hundreds of industry business types that fall under these industries, there are 5 major industries, and that's them on the screen at present. These are the priority industries for the Australian government. If the applicant's business falls into one of those, they will receive priority in the application process. And they also might fall into what is called enabling technologies and services. And there's 4 of these. These businesses in these industries have either to be providing services to one of the 5 or more than one of the 5 priority industries, or be established in such a way that they can provide those services. So they also receive priority treatment in this process. So that's the overview of the Accelerating Commercialisation grant. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer those questions, or you can send them through to me later on, because we're now going to move into other aspects of ESS BIZGRANTS. So why would you use ESS BIZGRANTS? Now, this was specifically developed for accountants, advisors to use so that you could deliver a proactive service to your clients. It's interesting to tell you how we come about to write this product. David Smith, who some of you will probably know, is the Managing Director of Smith Inc. And in 2002, he was the President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Australia, and has been a very strong advocate for various software developments relating to the accounting industry. And I had dinner with him one night a few years ago, and he asked me about government grants, because he knew that we'd had a fair bit of experience in government grants, and that we had papers on government grants within ESS BIZTOOLS, our major product. And after I'd explained how grants operated, I asked him why. And David indicated to me that he was the consultant appointed by one of the accounting consolidator organisations to undertake due diligence reviews on the accountancy firms who had indicated they were interested in being acquired by the aggregator. And part of that process was he was to interview clients of those accountancy firms. And when he'd done this, he'd found that one of the major areas of concern that the small medium enterprise operators were raising with him about their accountant was that their accountants were not keeping them aware of government grants. And one of the things that really upset them was when they found out that one of their competitors had received a government grant that they knew nothing about. So David's words to me was he thinks accountants should be far more proactive in providing a government grant service. The system we've developed enables the accountancy firm to be the project manager. You're not sending the work out to some third party, or your client's not going off to some third party who may be inclined to try to encourage your client to switch their allegiance to another tax agent or indeed an accountancy firm. There is the potential to earn substantial consulting fees for accountancy firms. You should be able to well and truly cover the subscription fee to ESS BIZGRANTS by activity in this area. And this is an ideal way to start a business advisory service for your accountancy business. An ideal way. And the government's going to be paying 50% of the cost. And the work you do, of course, therefore, the government's paying 50%. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not just work for accountants out of government grants. There is a number of other business groups, professional groups, who will receive some of the government money. But accountants can earn a fair bit out of it. I've undertaken budgets, cash flow forecasts, debtors reviews, human resources systems, strategic plans, business plans, mentored about 6 or 7 different company managements for 6-month periods. Project management role, especially for accelerating commercialisation and its predecessor, Commercialising Australia. There is a lot of work that accountants who are prepared to undertake business advisory services work can undertake under government grant programs. A couple of weeks ago, I was retained by one of the government departments to run a corporate governance training session that was defined as a Reader's Digest version of the Company Director's Diploma course in 7.5 hours. That was with 12 companies, and since then I've signed 2 of them up, and another one we're talking to in fairly big project work built around strategic plans and the implementation of corporate governance strategies to those businesses. So there's a lot of work can flow out of this area. And obviously there are our contact details. So what I'm going to do now is go onto our website. So when you go into the ESS BIZGRANTS website, we need to establish a profile. Because we're doing a webinar and time's restricted, I'm just going to show you one which we used for a demonstration last week. I've called this business Brisbane West Fabricators Proprietary Limited. You could insert a number if you wanted to, because we are using cloud technology, so it's in the cloud. You need to identify the type of entity that the applicant belongs to. So we've identified a company here. We've got some questions. Do they export? Do they import? So we've said yes, they do export, they don't import. We need to know the number of employees. This theoretical business has got 25 employees, but we have got different bands of employee numbers, and we said 20 to 200 obviously covers this. Do they have an ABN? They need an ABN to receive a government grant. The next question is, how many years has the business been operating? Again, these are the bands that the various grants use. This business has been going for 9 years, so it's over 3 years. The next question relates to turnover. My theoretical business has got a turnover of $8 million. These are the different bands that apply depending on various grants. So it's in the 1.5 to 20 million area. Are they registered for GST? They are, and they need to be if they're going to get a government grant. They're not tax exempt, and they're doing some R&D. Now, we're not asking them, are they spending over $20,000? And we're not even asking them if they are a company, even though we now know that they are a company. But we're using that question there to bring to their attention that there are some other grants that we would assume that you would have had to undertake some research and development to have been doing anything in that area. We then had to insert the address, and when I put this in, I put in the postcode 4305. This business is in Ipswich, which is a city outside of Brisbane, and the system then reviewed where 4305 was, and it's part of the major cities of Australia. It's considered to be part of the Brisbane metropolitan area. We can then go to business industry code. I'll just remove what's already there. So when we go to business industry code, if you know the code from your tax return, you just insert the code there and then click search grants. If you don't know the grant, sorry, the industry code, just insert the keyword. So this is a steel fabricator, so I'm inserting steel, and we then got the various categories of business that incorporate the word steel. And this is the one I wanted, structural metal product manufacturing. You could have more than one industry group if the business is involved in more than one industry. We can then click search grants. Now I've already been working on this one, so we already have 5 businesses in potentially eligible. Normally the first thing you get is pending, and these are the grants that are pending. So I'm just going to show you one of these so you can see how it works. So we might pick on business growth grant. What you get when you first click on a grant is a grant detail summary, which you can read. You could do this while the client's sitting opposite you. So you've read that and said, okay, that suits this particular client. If you want to look at the funding, the business growth grant has got funding from $500 to $20,000 on a 50% basis. If you want to have a look at the application toolkit, we have a paper in the system which explains how the business growth grant program operates. That's the index. So if you wanted to read what this grant's all about, there's information there to show that to you. When we developed this, we decided that accountants didn't necessarily have to become experts in the grants, but if you wanted to have the information, it would be made available to you. And then there's some additional criteria which needs to be answered, because what we're trying to do is put all this information through a funnel and decide at the other end whether your client has got the attributes which would say they might be eligible for this particular grant. So does the business provide or supply specialized services for use in the mining and mineral extraction industries? We say yes. Is the business solvent? These are the key questions in this grant. Has the business been operating under an appropriate structure for at least 3 years? You need to have been operating for 3 years to get this grant. Has the applicant ever received a business growth grant or a tailored advisory services grant under the previous Enterprise Connect program? Now, we're going to answer no to that because we haven't. And because we've now answered those questions correctly, and obviously one of the answers was no, we now have Apply Now, which is the URL which would take us to the government website whereby an application could be submitted for this grant. It takes a little while, so we won't go there. We'll now close that down. And what the system's now done, when we started, we had 10 grants in pending, and it's now pushed them into potentially eligible, which when we started there was 5 and now there's 6. So they're the ones I'm now going to concentrate on. So here's accelerating commercialization, because in a previous run through we decided that was that business. That's the grant we've looked at in a bit more detail today. So there's a summary on it, and we've already applied, and the same system works. There's the business growth grant we've just done. Export market development grant is there in the system. So there's a number of grants there. What I'm just going to show you now is we can now produce the report. So the report is produced by the system. It's obviously got the name of your client. Prepared by would be your name as the subscriber to ESS BIZGRANTS. It dates the report. It has a précis on the grants that have been identified that your client could be eligible for. It states the grant amounts. Then it goes on to the next grant. So the whole concept is you are then able to sit down with your client and present the grant report and have a conversation with your client as to whether they wish you to proceed with handling the grant applications for a fee, or whether they are going to take this report now and go off and do their own thing. The vast majority of the clients will ask you to do it, and our suggestion is that you start a separate fee file and you bill them separately for this work. If you are then interested in being engaged to undertake some of the consulting work for whatever is identified as being an appropriate role for you to play, you would need to submit a proposal to your client that would have to be approved by the person responsible for that particular grant from the government, most of which are private enterprise persons who have been employed on contracts these days. And you then have the report which you're able to submit to your client. When do you prepare a report like this? You can do it on 2 occasions in a year if you wanted to. It's an ideal job, I think, in June, July, when people might not be as busy in your office as they are the rest of the year. And you could start processing. It takes about 2.5 minutes to fill in those profiles. It will take 5 to 10 minutes for someone that understands the client to answer the questions. But you're then in a position to process and produce a report like this. But when most people are utilizing this system is as they're completing the annual financial accounts, they enter the profile information, and that means that when the client has a meeting with you, either at their office or your office, to review the financial accounts in a very proactive manner, you can also table this grant report to them for them to consider as to whether they want to proceed further on a particular government grant. So that's how the system operates. I've gone back now to the home page when you first click onto this site, and you're most welcome to do this. There's a very interesting testimonial there from David Smith, who, as I said earlier, was the key instigator to us undertaking this project. And you'll note that David's comment is that he believes every accountant should have this tool so that you can help clients to access government grants. After all, every business is paying towards these government grants, but are your clients receiving their fair share of them? We have a free trial that's available for 14 days. You can log on. You just have to fill in this information, and you will then be given a password and username for you to process 1 or 2 of your clients so you can see how the system operates. Once you become a subscriber, the subscription is per office, and you can use the system 24/7. The subscription amount is $450 plus GST per annum. Let's go on to pricing. So $450 plus GST gives you 12 months subscription, or you can pay that at $43 per month plus GST if you wish. So that's basically the end of our webinar today. Do you have any questions? I haven't seen any questions come through yet. If you think of some questions later on, please don't hesitate to send them to us, peter@essbiztools.com.au. We would really like to invite you to undertake that 14-day trial, and obviously we would like to see each of you attending this webinar today to become subscribers to ESS BizGrants. We therefore look forward to hearing from you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for participating today. Goodbye.